Welcome to this Fixtures Podcast, Episode 4, Gameweek 3. I'm joined today by Nicky Erdman.
Hello.
And Mark Naum.
Hi there.
Getting it right now.
About time, jeez.
All right. So, very good game week this week. We got a lot to talk about, as usual. Just going to say this every game week. Going to try not to be an hour. No promises. Starting off from the top, we have Aston Villa 2, Everton 0.
I watched this game during school on Friday, and
We got a bad boy over here.
I like to think so. But it was pretty good. That I was very sad because on my fantasy team I had Tyrone Mings on the bench, and all my defenders this week got 1 point, and Tyrone Mings got 7. And so it was not a good week for me, but it was a good game to watch. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I didn't get caught, so.
And I mean, I think that's poor from Everton, really.
Very poor.
They really weren't in this game at all. And
I could tell immediately from kickoff that they were just out of it. I mean, all their players.
Which, I mean, they really didn't control possession very much, but their chances weren't very good.
Everton
only one shot on target all game.
Yeah, and they had 12 shots total. That's pathetic.
Yeah.
Everton looks so out of sorts this year. I don't know what's going on. It might be Gylfi Sigurdsson not being that great this year. It might be Marco Silva or something, but I don't know.
I think they should have started Moise Kean that game because he didn't start.
Yeah, probably.
And I think if they would have started him, they would have had a better impact because they started Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
He's like a championship level striker. I don't know why they're still bothering with him.
I know they have Moise Kean now.
Well, I mean, Moise Kean is young. I mean, you don't want to start.
So is Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's like 20 or something.
Really?
Yeah, he's pretty
He's like
young.
the same age.
Well, I don't know. That's
Why not? And also, why not start Alex Iwobi as well?
Yeah,
That's a great question.
Paid an arm and a leg for him.
I
Well,
know.
I mean, it's against Aston Villa, so I don't know that they thought they were going to struggle as much as they did. And
Louise plays for Aston Villa.
no, different Louise.
Hilarious.
Louise.
And I mean, Aston Villa really did capitalize on their chances in this
They
game.
really did. It was a really good game to watch. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think Aston Villa was definitely the better side. I enjoyed seeing John Terry prosper once again.
Do you think Wesley's going to be scoring a bunch of goals this season?
I have maybe versus the smaller teams, but I think versus bigger opposition. But I mean, Everton is pretty big opposition.
Yeah.
But I think versus the top 6, he is not going to score that many goals. But I think versus the lower teams, I think he's going to continue to bang.
He'll
him
put
in.
up decent numbers, but I mean, this is his first goal of the season.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. I don't see him putting up a ton of goals. I really don't.
One thing that I did notice while watching this game was Jack Grealish looked absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I never really.
I thought John McGinn looked very good too.
John McGinn looked very good too, but I thought Jack Grealish he controlled play in for Aston Villa, and he was just making all the right balls, all the right passes. Honestly, that score should have been much higher than 2-0 for Aston Villa. Jack Grealish was just absolutely phenomenal for them.
And that's what Jack Grealish and John McGinn are meant to do. I mean, they seem to be like the pacemakers of the team. They're both. I mean, I know Jack Grealish is an academy boy, Villa boy through and through. So hopefully he can keep being like their pacemaker throughout the season. He can if he's playing well, the team's playing well is what I've seen so far.
All right. Well, I think that's Aston Villa 2, Everton 0. Moving on to your game, Nick. We have Norwich City 2, Chelsea 3.
Yeah, it was a good game to watch.
What an opening 30 minutes, though.
Yeah, it was a very good opening 30 minutes that I also did not get to see because it was at 6 a.m. And, I think it was 6:30. Well, Dad came in my room and woke me up at halftime. And so I was half awake in my bed watching this game. And I saw Tammy Abraham score that third goal, and I was very happy. And I watched a replay of that first goal that Tammy Abraham scored, and that was phenomenal. That was a very good goal.
Two good goals from Tammy Abraham.
And another goal from Mason Mount.
Another
That's
goal
two
from
games
Mason
for him.
Mount. And another goal for Timu Pukki.
Jesus.
Golden Boot leader at the moment.
I know it's scary, but I mean Mason Mount is looking very promising now. He's starting to actually kind of. I think he's starting to get used to the opposition that he's starting to play against, and I think Norwich is a familiar side for him too. And I think that's why they all played so well, was because Tammy and Mason both played versus Norwich last season. They're familiar with them. They're familiar with how they play.
Yeah, potentially.
So I think that's why those two specifically played well versus them, because they're used to them.
Yeah, that could be it. And I think this Chelsea side is starting to click a little bit better now than I think it was.
It looked a lot more promising that game. It looked a lot more like they were playing versus... the build-up play looked a lot similar to how they were playing versus United.
I will say, I think this team, this Chelsea side, it could be a force to be reckoned with once Callum Hudson-Odoi is back in this team.
Yeah, once Callum Hudson-Odoi and Ruben Loftus-Cheek come back, I think it's going to be a tough one. But I also was very disappointed with the fact that Batshuayi did not get a start, or he didn't even come on. I think Batshuayi needs to be given some minutes. I mean, he's been playing with our academy team in Premier League 2, and he has just been banging them in like nobody's business. He's just been going crazy, and I think he's good enough to be our starting striker, and I want to give him that chance to redeem himself, because he's just been shunned into exile for some reason. But, I mean, everybody, anywhere, any Chelsea fan will tell you the same thing, that Batshuayi is probably our best striker that we have right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And, I mean, yeah, from what we've seen from Batshuayi, he is good, but I know he can potentially be an issue in the dressing room, and he rubs managers the wrong way.
It's got to be something like that. I mean, with his talent.
I've never actually heard anything like that.
I haven't heard of anything, but it's got to be something like that.
Well, I mean, at Valencia, they didn't even let him finish out his loan spell. I mean, that has to be pretty bad.
He was also dreadful over there.
He was, but it got to the point that they said, we can't even continue to have you here just as a bench warmer. You need to leave.
Yeah, I don't think that was a locker room issue. I think that was a money issue. Because
the coach said, I want nothing to do with him.
I mean, he did fantastic at Dortmund. Everyone remembers that.
Yes.
He did pretty okay at Crystal Palace too. So we know he can score in the Premier League. So I don't see what the point of not starting him is.
Yeah, I imagine he will get a start.
He's proven. That wraps up Norwich 2, Chelsea 3. Moving on now to Brighton 0, Southampton 2. Southampton wins a game finally. I almost said Brockhampton instead of Southampton.
Okay, yeah. So thank you, Nicky, for taking over my job.
I did it a lot more enthusiastically.
So, yeah. We have Southampton putting up 2 goals against Brighton away at Brighton. And obviously that Florian Andone red card, what on earth? That was bad.
I was very angry about this game because I have not one but 2 Brighton defenders in my defense on my fantasy, and so I was very upset with this game.
All right. Well, apparently we're just going to rename this podcast to Nicky's defensive woes on his fantasy Premier League team.
My defense, I've changed my defense almost completely every game week, and it's just garbage every single game week.
Anyways, Musa Genepo.
Yeah, I think these were 2 solid goals. I mean, Southampton really did take their chances in this game, and was it Brighton back to being same old Brighton? Because I mean, they've had a good first 2 games, and this was a poor showing from them. And this is Southampton's first goals and first points.
No, they did score last week.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry,
insane
yes.
Adrian mix-up. But yeah,
Yes, but this is their first points of the season so far, and I think Brighton really could have done better here, and I think that playing with 10 men did not help their case at all. And I mean, both goals were scored after that Florian Andone red card. I mean, do you feel that Brighton could have won this game had one of their strikers not get sent off?
I mean, of course they could have. I wouldn't be saying this last year, but especially with just Trossard and Mape up front, who I'm pretty sure are both new to the team. I mean, this year, don't quote me on that, but just throwing them in the deep end by getting yourself red carded for no reason. I mean, that's gonna mess up your team's rhythm. It's gonna mess up the game a little bit. So of course,
yeah. kind of branching off that, as someone who's played on a team with someone getting a red card before in very early on in the match, it definitely impacts the team. It impacts the morale of the team and the mentality going into the rest of the match. Because instead of playing your normal game that you would like to play, your normal game where you're trying to win and you're striving to take shots off and win, you're playing more defensively. You're saying, oh, shoot, I need to cover for this guy now that he's gone.
Right, now you have holes in your team that you need to fill.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's incredibly difficult to deal with a red card that early on in the game, especially.
Right, somewhere on the field, something is getting sacrificed when that happens.
Shout out Norbert for the red card.
Didn't have to call him out. Jeez.
All right. So I mean, I think Brighton really could have done better here, but I think this loss is really on Florian Andone to get sent off like that. I think they have a much better shot with playing 11, a full team versus playing 10 men. So yeah, I think Brighton can be a little bit disappointed in that, and obviously he's suspended for the next 2 games because it was a straight red. So they're going to need to pull out probably Glenn Murray's going to be starting up front and get his run of games in.
I love Glenn Murray.
All right. So I think that wraps up Brighton 0, Southampton 2.
Moving on to Man United 1 and Crystal Palace 2. An absolute shocker of a game. Ryan, what do you make of this?
Apparently, Nicky's taking over the podcast. This honestly... how much was Harry Maguire again?
80 million.
I'm sorry. Can you say it one more time?
80 million.
80 million!
80 million for that really just bad defending.
Don't forget
Jordan
the
Ayew
50
goal.
million for Aaron Wan-Bissaka too. That
He wasn't really at fault for that Jordan Ayew goal, but that was a total mix-up between Lindelof and Maguire. Where, first of all, Lindelof should have had that header. There's no reason for him not to. He totally was like, it's not a big deal, and just didn't go for it. Jordan Ayew wins the header, and then Harry Maguire is not covering at all, and Jordan Ayew just had a mile of open space. And then just some not great goalkeeping.
Yeah.
And it just really shocking.
But the one thing I would like to touch on is, let's talk about the big man, Daniel James. 2 goals and 2 appearances for him now for Manchester United. And
the Daniel James goal was fantastic.
That was a fantastic goal. And honestly,
he's looking really confident.
He was the cheapest transfer they had this transfer window, and he's probably the best one.
Yeah, he's looking like an absolute steal.
What?
I would not call him the best one after 2
The best
games.
transfer that they've had.
I'm
willing to make that statement
United?
right now. The best transfer that they've had this season, United.
I'm
Who
gonna
do you
say-
think is the best transfer?
Well, I'm going to say so far, but I think overall it's going to end up being Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I think they needed him the most out of all of them. Their defense hasn't been great recently. I mean, obviously,
Clearly, it's still not
it's
great.
still not perfect. But I think with he was Palace's best player last season. So with time, I think it's going to end up showing that Daniel James was a great buy. Especially for a great price, but Aaron Wan-Bissaka is going to be, a very good player.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Aaron Wan-Bissaka is good, and I think United definitely made a good deal with that. If Daniel James can keep playing how he's playing, I think he could be an absolute steal. I think it's a little too early to tell, though, one way or the other.
I saw how he was playing at Swansea, and I'm telling you, he's going to be their best transfer this season. He's absolutely phenomenal.
Well, time will tell, but so far, so good for Daniel James
And Crystal Palace.
And then we have the moment of the game, 93rd minute. Just some really poor defending and really poor goalkeeping, and Crystal Palace walk away with a win at Old Trafford after United's 22 shots to Palace's 5, and after
Same
having
amount of shots on target, though. Both had 3 shots on target.
and after a 28% possession for Crystal Palace.
I mean,
This is a FIFA game.
Yeah, that last 15 minutes for Palace was I was like sweating. I was about to fall out of my seat. It was like, especially after Daniel James got that goal, it was like, how are they going to score another one? How are they, like, it looked like Man United was about to score a second.
Yeah, honestly, how are they going to hang on at this point?
Yeah, I know. It looked like Man United was like pushing for the second goal, the winning goal. And then all of a sudden, just from like the most shoddy counterattack I've ever seen, Patrick Van Aanholt gets the worst goal I've ever seen. But it was just magical. It was so funny to watch.
And David De Gea really should have had that. He should have had that. And that's you don't be you're as a world-class goalkeeper, you don't miss that. And I mean, as much as this, I mean, there was a lot going wrong in this game, but I think that at least that point it falls on David De Gea to miss that save. And I think backing up because we kind of jumped ahead. Obviously, the Rashford penalty miss. So after the debacle,
he was my striker.
Week, after the debacle last week of who's taking the penalties at United, is it Pogba? Is it Rashford? Is it Martial? Rashford now gets his chance and also puts the penalty wide.
He booty.
They should send De Gea up there. I mean, honestly, what do they have to lose?
So, I mean, because this was quite the debate last week of who should be taking penalties, and the debate was if it really didn't look like United had a system of who was taking penalties, and it kind of looked the same way this week, and Rashford missed his penalty as well. So they really need to get that penalty situation sorted out because two missed penalties in back-to-back games is not good. Not good at all.
I mean, I think we all know who's taking the next penalty, though. So, I don't think there's going to be any controversy on that one, unless Martial misses. Oh, hilarious! Unless Martial misses that one too. So
Daniel James.
So we'll see where that goes.
I just want to say real quick, my goal for this podcast is to one day have Alan McAnally on this podcast with us. Mark, would you like to agree with me on that statement?
Oh, I completely agree. Alan McAnally is the greatest commentator of all time.
Well, I want an episode with Alan McAnally and Ray Hudson.
Oh, Ray Hudson on here would be
and
magisterial.
All right, well, then you better start putting out some better content there, bud.
Hey, this has been the most interesting episode so far. Also, you cut out all of my funny, not racist.
Okay, well, we're getting rid of
jokes.
that now. Okay.
And there's another cut. All right, so I think that wraps up United 1, Crystal Palace 2.
Announce the next game, Mark. Go ahead.
And you want to announce the next game, Mark? Go ahead.
Of course. So we got Sheffield. Oh, sorry. Watford 1, West Ham 2. I messed up my
Watford 1, West Ham 3.
I am so sorry.
Mark,
all of
is
you.
not
this is not your job.
Podcast.
I know. I didn't sign up to be the announcer. Nicky put me up to it.
Sebastian Haller finally puts up some goals, and even though they're both kind of tap-ins, he's scoring, and that's good.
Goal's a goal
for West Ham.
A 40-yard banger is worth the same as a 2-yard tap.
Watford scoring their first goal of the Premier League season so far.
Weren't they the last team to do it? I feel like that.
I think so. And I mean, and then going on to still lose 3-1. Is Watford in some serious trouble?
I honestly, at this point, I don't think Watford made the moves they needed to make during the transfer window. And I honestly think that if they don't make some serious money moves in January, I think they're definitely in danger of maybe even being relegated.
Yeah, that backline is not a Premier League backline at all. And honestly, the rest of the team really isn't. I'd say De La Feu is the only one I would confidently say is
the only four people I would put as Premier League ready would be De La Feu, Cleverly, Gray, and Will Hughes.
You don't like Holobas?
I think he's getting to the end of his career, and I think he's starting to age more, and I don't think he's as good as he used to be.
For the record, Holobas is 35 years old, so yeah.
I'm always right.
But West Ham putting on a good display away to Watford. obviously scoring 3 goals. One of them is a penalty, very early penalty. And then the 2 goals from Sebastian Haller. So, I mean, this is a good win for West Ham. And, I mean, they were a little shaky getting off the mark, I think. But I think if they can build on this, they'll be in good shape. But whether they can do that or not remains to be seen. So, but yeah, Mark, how do you feel about West Ham in this win?
Okay, so I think this win is definitely like a big confidence booster for West Ham. I mean, this team is like the weirdest Premier League team I've ever seen. They got like Pablo Fornals and like Felipe Anderson playing on the same team as Fabianski. And so I never thought I'd see that. So I think they just need some time together, some confidence, and then, the cohesion will come with time. So I think this win is a good start. Hopefully they can get a couple more in there.
Yeah, and I mean, 16 shots, 10 on target. That's a pretty good ratio, as opposed to Watford's 23 shots, only managing 3 on target all game. So pretty poor from Watford. I believe they are currently in last, because I think it finally makes sense to actually start looking at the table now that we have a few games under our belt. Yeah, Watford in last place, the only team not to get any points so far this season.
That's going to be a hard hole to dig out of, honestly, I think, at this point. I mean, with that -6 goal difference, that's killer.
Yeah, and I mean, they're not looking good for Watford at the moment. So I think that wraps up Watford 1, West Ham 3. Moving on, we have Sheffield United 1, Leicester City 2. So
that's another victory for Leicester, and honestly, I'm every week I become more and more impressed with Leicester, to be honest.
Yeah, Leicester played well here. Obviously, Jamie Vardy getting on the score sheet with a good goal. Oliver McBurney scoring for Sheffield United is good for him. He's obviously their most expensive player and broke their transfer record. So it's good to see him getting on the score sheet. I like Oliver McBurney. I like him a lot. But Harvey Barnes putting in the second goal for Leicester and sealing the deal. So
with a pretty great goal, I have to say. I'm pretty sure he's an academy player from them, right?
You got it.
I believe so. Yeah. So yeah, but I think this is a solid win for Leicester. Obviously away at Sheffield United. Sheffield United started to stumble a little bit too. They started well, but obviously they beat Palace and then drew at Bournemouth. So they're looking good. They have 4 points so far after 3 games. And Leicester's always going to be a challenge for them, I feel like, even at home. So I don't think Sheffield can feel too bad about this result.
Yeah, not a bad result at all. Yeah, I don't think they were truly expecting a win at all. Like, they were hoping for a draw, I'd assume. So, this isn't the worst result possible.
Can you do me a favor, Ryan? Can you look up Sheffield's mascot? I want to see, because they're known as the Blades, but I want to see what their mascot is. Like, it's just like a giant,
good,
like a giant sword.
It's a pirate, for the record.
That's pretty sick.
So this is good content for a podcast that has no visual element.
They can imagine.
So you can imagine what a pirate looks like, and that's Sheffield United's mascot. Yeah, so this is... I think Sheffield United is doing surprisingly well so far this season. I think they could have easily been the whipping boys of this competition. And they're sitting at 4 points after 3 games. That's not bad at all. So if they can keep it up, I think they have a shot at staying up. They really do. But it's going to be tough.
Chelsea up next is not a great fixture either. So this will be like their true, their, what's it called? Oh, moment of... rite of passage, there we go. Where they figure out, are they truly Premier League worthy? Like, they're about to go up against the big boys,
Yeah, and Chelsea coming off a win is going to be even more difficult. But Chelsea has looked still odd. I think they're still finding their feet, too. So we'll see. That's a game that's definitely going to be one to watch for next week. Because I have been impressed with Sheffield United so far. So I think that wraps up Sheffield United 1, Leicester City 2. Moving on, we have Liverpool 3, Arsenal 1.
Okay, so I know from the scoreline that is not a good scoreline, but I don't think I mean, most fans will remember this. We get beat like 4-5-1 at Anfield most of the time, so I can't hate that. I mean, 3-1 is better than what we've normally done. We didn't look perfect, but
Well, and Arsenal actually came off the mark looking pretty good. They had a lot of really good early chances. Adrian almost really ended up in the headlines for the wrong reasons again. After coming off his line and messing up and running into Van Dijk, and then Aubameyang almost chipping it over him. But luckily, it was put wide, and Liverpool went on to score 3. So,
Mark, I would like to ask you a question here. Okay.
Go for it.
Why is Nacho Monreal still starting?
Okay, here's the thing. When your first choice left back, who just signed, is already injured, and your second choice literally got robbed. I mean, like he's been out. I'm sorry, Nacho Monreal has to start. I think this is the main problem with the beginning of the season Arsenal right now. We've got so many injuries and so many players just out for various reasons. We haven't been able to start Mesut Ozil or Kolasinac. I mean, from this back line, we have one starter out of 4 plus the goalie. And so I honestly think that, results are going to start getting better after a little bit. But, we still have Torreira, who isn't completely match fit. We still have Lacazette, who is still nursing a minor injury. This team is going to look better in a few weeks. It's just we have sort of a mini injury crisis.
Also, David Luiz is a secret agent.
Yes, let's talk about David Luiz for a good moment here.
Secret agent.
Because,
Agent Luiz.
Wow. You thought you were getting an upgrade from Mustafi.
We were. I'll still maintain that it is. Because if it was Mustafi, it'd be another 4 or 5-1.
Well, and I mean, this is just kind of what David Luiz does. He's a decent defender, and you don't realize that when he's doing well. But when he fails spectacularly.
And that's why almost every Arsenal fan is waiting for Rob Holding to come back, because Rob Holding, 23 or so years old, but he's still an upgrade over everything else we have minus Socrates. Last year he got to play 8 Premier League games, and him and Bellerin looked great in all of them, and then they both got injured right in a row. And so I think the Socrates and Holding partnership looked pretty good last year, so hopefully that comes back soon, as he's just come back from injury.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the first goal. So obviously Joel Matip coming in and scoring that header.
Big man.
Yeah. Big man for sure. And really, really fantastic Joel Matip. That's 2 goals in 2 games for him. So that's.
Wouldn't beat Joel.
No.
Except the fancy E.
It's got the fancy E. And then obviously the penalty, where David Luiz pulling on the shirt, and Salah putting that one away. And then the third goal, where he just left David Luiz for dead.
There's something that the clock wants.
And really just fantastic. That was some vintage Mo Salah in that third goal. That was fantastic. And I mean, as soon as you saw him dribble past David Luiz, you knew that was going in. But Torreira pulling one back at the end. Obviously nowhere near enough, but it was a decent goal. It was well done. I will say. And
Emery played Emery pulled a Wenger this game with he waited on changing the tactics up until we were 2. I think he brought Lacazette on when we were 2-0 down. Lacazette, although I guess he was kind of a risk to start, is one of those halftime or 60th minute substitutions if he's not starting. He's an impact player for sure, but if he was fit, he'd obviously be starting. But going this far down, you need to put on your third striker. You need to put on a proven goal scorer other than Aubameyang, because Aubameyang couldn't find a goal that game. So Lacazette always steps in his place because with having three attackers like that, it means you have three different players that can score. But when one of them, is just a little bit off form that game, and then the other one is, a new player, you kind of need the third one to come in, step up, but he couldn't because he was only brought on like 80th or so minute.
Yeah, but I think overall this is a good win for Liverpool. I don't think there was ever any doubt that they were going to beat Arsenal at Anfield. I think they have won every single game against them at Anfield in like the last 3 or 4 years.
Yes, it's 2015.
Yeah, so I don't think there was ever any real concern. So and it could have been a lot worse for Arsenal. So, but good display from Liverpool. And obviously, in first place at the moment, the only team to win all 3 of their games. Manchester City in second with 7 points.
Man, you're cool.
And, we're top of the league and having a laugh.
Moving on to Bournemouth 1, Manchester City 3.
So
I would just like to start out by saying... Click the button. But whoa! Okay, now I would like to start out by saying, once he clicks the button, click the button.
Well, you clicked the wrong button.
Now I would like to start out by saying that Harry Wilson's free kick was absolutely amazing.
Phenomenal.
That was the most. That was like one of the best free kicks I've ever seen. It was.
I scared my dad with that.
It could not have been any more like perfect. It was beautiful.
His free kicks are unbelievable.
I would say him and what's his name, Madison, are tied for the best free kicks in the league. 100%.
I'm so excited to see Harry Wilson at Liverpool once he. I think this season at Bournemouth is going to be fantastic for him. I think he's going to be. I think he's been looking like Bournemouth's best player in these past few games, and Bournemouth is not a bad side, so that's an accomplishment. So.
They have an injury crisis going on. He's going to get so many chances. I mean, he came on for Charlie Daniels, who went off injured. So,
2 goals in 2 games. So, I mean, and I think they were both from free kicks, right? His other one was a free kicks as well.
I have no idea.
I believe it was.
This is my input, though.
But he was fantastic. But at the end of the day, that was not enough, and City pretty comfortably, as I think we all expected, saw this game off pretty comfortably.
Bournemouth put up a good fight. They put up a good fight. It could have easily been like a 5-0 thrashing, but they put up a good fight. I respect them for that. That's pretty much, I think that's everything we need to say about this game.
And no, I think, that might not be everything because, Sergio Aguero, a lot of people are like, especially after last week when he kind of feuded with Guardiola, everybody was like, how is he going to come back and, show Guardiola that he needs to start? And I mean, 2 goals, a well-taken goal and a half. I mean, I think he kind of proved, he's still there. And of course, David Silva was insane that game too.
Yeah, and De Bruyne's still looking good as well. Raheem Sterling, another goal for him. Yeah, this City side is looking good, and I don't think they were definitely not gonna slip up in this game after last week with the draw against Spurs. So
why is Zinchenko number 11?
Anyway, so and João Cancelo making his debut for City in this game, coming on for Kyle Walker.
Yeah, I think Cancelo is going to be pretty important. I mean, Kyle Walker, especially last game, he didn't look as great as he normally does. So if he finally has like a rotation option. So, if he starts doing that again, Cancelo can come right in.
Kyle Walker's kind of a jerk.
Yeah, no, definitely. He was getting booed by the fans the entire time though, so
like I've never met him, but like he gives off the energy of a jerk, And like I've seen him do some jerk stuff.
Yeah.
Plus he played at Tottenham, so automatic garbage.
So I think comfortable win for City, as I think we all expected. So Bournemouth 1, Manchester City 3.
now on
putting them at 7 points, obviously in second place behind Liverpool after the draw with Spurs last week. Speaking of Spurs,
Ooh, my favorite game of the week this week.
Mike is not here to explain what happened, but he did send me a lengthy message of his explanation of what went wrong.
Well,
With Tottenham 0, Newcastle 1.
well, while you pull that up, I would just like to comment that those Newcastle jerseys are absolutely fire. Those orange Newcastle jerseys, oh my God, they're beautiful, and they're so pretty. They're so pretty.
Anyways, Almiron was running up and down that pitch the whole time. The Newcastle team actually looked like they wanted to be there and wanted to win. That kind of surprised me. Like I know that's a little weird to say that surprised me, but like, you know, especially against the Spurs side, you'd expect them to like just pack in and sit there. They did, especially in the second half, but that first half they were lively.
I want to see Newcastle with Josef Martinez. Please.
Well, Joelinton actually scored his first goal for Newcastle. So obviously the young striker coming in, I believe he's their most expensive player at the moment.
Yeah, he is their transfer record. Finally broke it after Almiron and before that Michael Owen.
So, I mean, so him putting up that goal is going to be huge for them. And the goal was really shockingly bad defending. Davinson Sanchez stepped out of position and just, I mean, the space just opened up between Davinson Sanchez and Danny Rose. You could have drove a truck through there. It was so bad. I don't understand what the thought process was there. I mean, Sanchez really moved out of the way. Mike blames it on Danny Rose, but I think he blames everything on Danny Rose. His car doesn't start in the morning, and he's like, Danny Rose? So, and I mean, yeah. So I think that goal is definitely on Davinson Sanchez. That was really poor defending, and there's just too much space between the two of them.
Honestly, after that game, and after seeing that team play, and after seeing those beautiful, beautiful orange jerseys, I really want to buy an orange jersey of Newcastle with Almiron on the back now, because I really like those orange jerseys. They were really good looking. Did you see those jerseys, Mark?
I actually did. I didn't particularly love them as much as you apparently do, but, you know.
Well, and then
So pretty.
What the shocking thing for me is Tottenham's game plan was to just lob balls into the box the whole game, and it was clearly not working after about 20 minutes.
Yeah, because they were playing. Newcastle was playing 5 in the back because their whole game plan was we're going to just under all costs we're just not going to let Tottenham score.
And I mean, you can't take anything away from the back line. I mean, Paul Dummett. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Paul Dummett looked good. Jamal Lascelles, other than tripping over his own 2 feet and almost giving away a penalty.
Looked good too.
Yeah, Cher looked good,
And we'll get to the penalty in a moment.
Yeah, but you know, otherwise, you know, other than the mistakes, they looked good. And then of course, Martin Dubravka was phenomenal.
Yeah, but I feel like for most of the game, Spurs was passing back and forth between Lucas and Son, kind of just over the box, just kind of crossing back and forth and just overhit crosses left and right. And I mean, and Danny Rose as well, and Kyle Walker-Peters putting in crosses, and they just were not connecting with anything. And
yeah, I don't know what
it really
Pochettino was
really
thinking
just shocking that a Spurs side like this would kind of go. Honestly, it looked like they looked like Burnley.
They had,
with the way they were playing. I did not understand it.
With 2 shots on target, they took, you know, I think, was it 17 shots with 2 on target? I mean, that's just, you know, that's not the Tottenham we all know and hate. Like, you know.
Yep, 17 shots, 2 on target.
Yeah, so
81% possession.
Yeah,
81% possession.
I mean, it looked like a team trying to. It looked like, you know, like you trying to drill a hole through like the earth. It's not going to work. You're not going to get all the way through the earth.
763 passes to Newcastle's 190.
They just decided they wanted to pass around a lot, which I can respect. But, you know, passing around is fine until, you know, you realize you're 1-0 down. You actually need a goal.
And I mean, in this instance, I really think that, again, Tottenham was missing Christian Eriksen, and by the time he came on, it was too little, too late. And they just don't have a playmaker in this team because Son is great off a counterattack and off a break. Lucas is very inconsistent, I feel like, but when he's on, he's on. Harry Kane is Harry Kane, but I feel like they don't have anybody in that midfield that can really play those through balls and play through that front three of Lucas, Kane, and Son. I mean, Lamela is not good enough, I feel like, to be the playmaker. Winks and Sissoko are not playmakers either. And they really need to get the Eriksen situation sorted out and either start playing Eriksen or just ditch him. And I mean, they're going to look better with Dele Alli coming back into the side, returning from injury. So
one thing that I have noticed, which I don't think either of you would have touched on this, but Christian Atsu for Newcastle, I've seen him play in 2 games for them now, and he's looked very good in both of them. I think
you would not have said that any other season than this, though.
Yeah, Christian Atsu as somebody who has been enjoying Newcastle for the last few seasons. Christian Atsu is not somebody you want to rely on week in, week out.
Yeah, but he's been playing good recently. On a good run of form. Good luck.
So conceded on bad marking by Danny Rose and Davinson Sanchez. Lots of crossing into the box that didn't work out. Lucas not being able to hit the net, and obviously the talking point of the game.
Oh boy,
Mike Dean denying the penalty to Spurs after Lascelles trips Harry Kane in the box. Mark, your thoughts on this?
Okay.
Is this a penalty? First of all, let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, I understand Jamal Lascelles was not tackling Harry Kane. He tripped over his own 2 feet, but it was an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. He was the last defender. Harry Kane was basically through if, again, he hadn't just taken himself down. So I think Mike Dean, ever since somebody called him a Spurs fan, people started calling him a Spurs fan because he celebrated one of their goals. Ever since then, he's hated Spurs. I guess it's like retribution or something. But I don't know. But he's like, I don't know. He did not make the right calls throughout the whole day, especially when it came to like penalties. I feel like that should have been given.
I feel like he's been in the past, he's been pretty inconsistent too.
Yeah, I think he's definitely.
He's not the best.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the refs that gets called out quite a bit. Nicky, your thoughts? Was it a penalty?
I didn't see it.
All right, Nicky, being a professional, researching all the games. This is the cutting edge content you listen to this podcast for.
I'm here for the humor. I'm not here for
Jamal Lascelles tripping over his own 2 feet. I can't stop saying that.
So okay.
Bigger
so
shoes, about the size of canoes.
Here's my interpretation of the events. So Mike Dean does not see the penalty. And I think that you could make an argument that Harry Kane is a little bit fishing for that penalty. Does that make it not a penalty? No, it's a penalty. I think all day. But that Mike Dean then says it's not a penalty. It goes to VAR. It's now up to VAR to either say that Mike Dean has made a clear and obvious error, this is a penalty, and to retract play and give the penalty, or to say that there's not enough evidence to say that this is a clear and obvious error and that continue to play. I think that's what happened in this case, is that this is not, I don't think this is a 100% a penalty. I think it's probably 85 to 90% a penalty. But, because you didn't have that 100%, I think the VAR refs were reluctant to kind of go against the head ref in this case without it being a super clear and obvious that mess up by Mike Dean. Nicky,
I would like to pull a quote here from the special one, okay? He said, "The only people who can complain about the introduction of security cameras are thieves.
Well, and I don't even think this is necessarily complaining of. I think the complaint about VAR. Well, and I mean, the alternative to this situation is, of course, Mike Dean goes over to a screen for 6 minutes and watches Harry Kane be tripped from every single angle, and then after everybody sits around and we play a commercial and everybody hangs out for way too long, Mike Dean comes back with a decision. And that's what the Premier League specifically wanted to avoid by going this route and having it be a case of there not being this going to the screen and doing this. That the only time that the VAR comes into practice is if there's a clear and obvious error, or if the ref, needs a review on something.
And the video refs aren't doing what they're meant to be doing. They're supposed to overturn a decision if the decision. It's not about proving the head ref wrong. It's about saying the head ref was at the wrong angle to see this. They need to be able to tell the audience, or not the audience. They need to be able to tell the ref that. That penalty, or that challenge should have been a penalty, and it wasn't their fault, but it still needs to be overturned from a not penalty decision to a penalty decision.
Yeah, but I think that it's potentially a case of that the VAR refs are almost a little reluctant to make that kind of call, and to kind of go against the head ref like that. So.
It happens. It's we move on.
No, and I think this is, and I mean, quite frankly, I know that there's been a lot of complaints about this. It should have been a penalty stuff in this game specifically. I'm sorry, but I don't feel like Spurs should be complaining that they didn't get a draw against Newcastle at home. And complaining that it's Mike Dean's fault. I'm sorry, but Spurs did not show up in this game, and Newcastle deserved that win. Yeah. And quite frankly, I don't think that's Mike Dean's fault. Yes, he made mistakes, but at the end of the day, Spurs really should have just steamrolled Newcastle, and they didn't show up. And poor defending, poor attacking, just an all-around poor display from Spurs really... really led to this. I don't think that penalty maybe makes it a point each, but I mean, at the end of the day, you shouldn't be relying on that. I don't think
you cannot spell Tottenham without ham.
Thank you, Nicky. Very cool. But honestly, I think Steve Bruce decided that he knew what was going to happen in the game, so he was like, he didn't want to pull, a Sean Dyche with, the long balls out of the box. But, it kind of ended up, what happened just because Spurs didn't adapt to, Newcastle wanting to sit back. So, Bruce, without really having too much of a tactical masterclass, still outthought Pochettino, which was weird and worrying.
Well, the interesting thing about this game, to me at least, is... I feel like Newcastle really went back to almost Rafa Benitez tactics and kind of stayed away from... They really lined up and looked like they did last season. And I think that helped them a lot in that regard. I don't think they were... I think he's trying to find a bit of a hybrid to use these, these players that have been playing under Rafa Benitez and kind of merge his own style with Rafa Benitez's style, which is interesting because they're two very, very different styles.
I would also like to comment on the fact that St. Maximin went off injured, and he's a very good player for them. He's one of the most expensive transfers that they brought in this year, and I think that might hit them a little hard.
Do you know how long the injury's for? Because St. Maximin is a good player. Do you know how long he's out for?
I have no idea. But I know he went off injured because I was watching that part of the game. He's a very good player, very solid player.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up that game. So Spurs 0, Newcastle 1, which takes us to the last game of the week. Wolves 1, Burnley 1.
I don't even know how that happened, dog.
Is Wolves feeling the European football curse?
I mean, they played really well in the Europa League, to be fair. They
did. They creamed Torino.
It was a great game. I mean, I think they are, right now, they're focused on the Europa League 100%.
But don't take anything away from Burnley either.
Yeah. I mean, that was a good display by Burnley.
And that goal was unbelievable.
Ashley Barnes for not only the golden boot, but the Puskas. I'm kidding. That's not winning the Puskas. But, you know.
Well, it was, for next year. This was a really, really, I've been saying over the past few weeks that maybe Burnley's turning over a new leaf and they're starting to play interesting football. No. This was some vintage Burnley. I don't know if that goal was hoofed up from their own half, just a long ball up, and just some bouncing around, falls to Barnes, and he just slams it into the goal from outside the box. It was a fantastic strike. Really, really good. And Burnley really played well this game. Their defense was solid. And Wolves, on the other hand, looks very, very limp. They do not look themselves. And I think it is because they are putting so much into the Europa League that they're starting to feel it. And Jimenez and Jota have not been at their best so far this season in the Premier League.
Really.
Well, he hasn't been playing very much. But yeah, I don't know. They could be in a bit of trouble. They could not be finishing as high as they want. I don't think they're going to get relegated or anything, but I don't think they're going to be finishing as high as they would want to with their current run of form. 3 draws in 3 games. Not great.
Consistency.
Which, yes, it's consistent.
But this one also came off Eric Peters losing his brain in the last minute of the game. So
yeah, I mean, they're for the record, their 3 draws have been against Leicester City, Manchester United, which is a good draw, and Burnley. So,
I mean,
I think they can be a little disappointed to not pick up some points in those games, but it's going to get easier for them, definitely. So, up next they play Torino on Thursday of this week.
And Everton on Sunday.
Everton on Sunday, followed by Chelsea, followed by Palace, Watford, and City. They actually have a really tough start to the season, especially with those European League games. But it starts to ease up a little bit for them towards the second half of the season.
Oui.
So so I think that you guys have anything else to add on any of the games?
I have something to add, not to this game, but in general to the podcast.
Sure.
Okay, so now it's time for a new series on this podcast that I'm starting now, and
without telling us,
I came up with it in the middle of this podcast while I was sitting here while they were talking about something that I didn't really care about that much. But so this is the new quote of the week, where we take a quote from somewhere, not necessarily the Premier League, somewhere in the footballing world, and we share it with our viewers, or not our viewers, our listeners.
Our viewers who can't see anything because there's no visual element to this podcast.
Our listeners, and I share it with them. And so this week, our first
What's your quote of the week?
Our quote of the week this week, it comes from Ray Hudson, and he was commentating upon Messi, and he says, "If Messi were the captain of the Titanic, he would have nutmegged the iceberg."
I feel like Ray Hudson's going to be featured here more than once.
Thank you. I will see you next time on the quote of the week.
And and I think I'm going to make a bit of an effort here moving forward as well to kind of touch on around the world of football. So obviously Serie A kicked off this week. I'm a big fan of Serie A. How
many Serie A games did you watch this week?
I watched Fiorentina Napoli.
I'm proud of you.
So Fiorentina Napoli winning 4-3 against Fiorentina.
I just want to give a quick shout out.
Go ahead.
Real quick to my boy Connor Sullivan out here. He's probably not listening. He might be listening. But he watched the entirety of the Roma-Genoa game.
Yeah, Roma
That was a
drawing
fire
Genoa
game too.
is
He chose a good game to watch.
AC Milan losing to Udinese. Sorry, Hans. Juve beating Parma. Lazio putting on a good display against Sampdoria.
Donde está la leche?
And Inter just putting on a masterclass today. And
Versus Leche.
Yeah, so
Donde está la leche?
some interesting stuff going on in Serie A. Most of the big teams looking good. AC Milan's stumbling a little bit, and Roma's stumbling. In La Liga, we had.
I don't think any of us actually.
No, but I do want to mention, just because it's funny, that Real Madrid drew this week and dropped points, which against Valladolid. I don't know anything
like
about
that.
La Liga, but I did want to mention that Real Madrid dropped points because that's always fun.
German league? Bundesliga?
Sure, you want to do a
If we're
quick
doing it at this
Bundesliga?
time?
Sure.
I mean, I hate La Liga, but I mean,
Meanwhile, in the Bundesliga,
I think, and Bayern game. Click on that.
yeah, Schalke losing to Bayern.
Robert Lewandowski's getting another hat trick. He's now the top scorer in the league in the Bundesliga.
And
Right now.
Dortmund putting 3 past Köln. Mönchengladbach beating Mainz by 3-1. And
Leipzig beating Frankfurt
beating Frankfurt
2-1.
2-1.
That's a big game. That's a big
And
win. That's a big win.
and I do want to mention as our last piece on the Bundesliga, Timo Werner signed a new contract at Leipzig.
See, that's very interesting to me because I mean, then I think Leipzig is honestly, I could see them fighting either winning the Europa League or fighting for a Champions League spot in the Bundesliga.
Well, Timo Werner's
Or really putting some pressure on
the kind of idea there, I think, was to turn the Bundesliga into a 3-horse race instead of a 2-horse race, and to really
right now it's a 1-horse race. No one's really caught Bayern in a very long time.
Dortmund won not that long ago.
I think their last
What
one
season was
like
that?
2015.
No, or even earlier. No,
Yeah,
even earlier.
I think it was like
It's
2012.
been a while.
It's
but
been a while.
But that was back when Klopp was at Dortmund.
Things have changed, and I think
So-
if RB Leipzig might be the first team to pull it off. Hot minute, you know.
And so that's what's going on around the world of football. We're gonna try to include that a little bit. Oh, and in France, Mbappe and Cavani are both injured, which means Neymar might not be going anywhere because it would be bad for PSG to lose all 3 of their best players.
Yeah, probably.
And Choupo-Moting scored, I think, a brace. If anybody ever told me that Choupo-Moting was going to score at all, ever, I would have slapped them in the face. But I guess I'm slapping myself in the face tonight, so.
And,
Cool.
And as a just a quick bit here, in the Scottish Premier League, both Celtic and Rangers winning all their games so far and playing against each other this weekend.
Ooh.
So
At
that
6 a.m.
Yeah, they only play at noon to avoid fights.
Oh, that makes sense.
So, so that will be definitely a game that we will review next week because I am going to definitely be watching that one.
Should go downtown for that one.
So, we'd like to thank you all for listening, and that's the Fixtures Podcast. See you all next week.
Episode 4.
Thank you.